Guardian of the Universe is the third full-length album from Seattle and Portland-based black and death thrash metal band Oxygen Destroyer. I usually think of this band as a death thrash metal band. They kind of sound more like that live, and there is kind of a blackened rasp and some influence from bands like Absu and Angel Corpse somewhere in there, but basically this is much more of a death thrash metal band, and it shows in the riffs, which are heavily influenced by classic thrash metal, especially late 80s style stuff, as well as groups like Vader. These guys have been around for a little while, and their early stuff, it was impressive. It had like kind of the right feeling to it, and I think the thing with their first record was that it felt congested. Now, like the same way that the Treasures Within for Merciless sounds like it's not fully getting there with the double bass drumming. It's kind of stopping and starting here and there. It feels disjointed a little bit. That was my feeling from that first record. They remastered it. They put it out again. It sounds great still, but they weren't quite there yet. You could see the potential in that record, but it wasn't until their second one that they really nailed the sound, the production values, the riffs. They were adding more and more nuance to everything they were doing, and the riffs really became the focal point naturally for this style. It's a fast-paced, brutal style of thrash metal that has heavy death metal influences, but doesn't forget where it came from, which is thrash metal that is heavily influenced by Creator. So if you're a fan of Hypnosia and Morbid Saint and can hear the Creator in there, if you're a fan of early Vader and you can hear like the Pestilence, the Creator, and all that in that too, you understand where this band was kind of coming from to start, but there's a little bit more to it as they continue on and produce more records. And this latest one goes a little bit harder on some of those black metal elements, some of the more technical elements in terms of its riffs, but it's always cutting a riff and whipping away at a fast pace. They never really stop to take a breath. So we won't stop to take a breath, but we will listen to a clip here and get a sense for the real density of this record and how it never really lets up. So this third record is really intended to be a tribute to the Gamera trilogy, which I think was from the early 90s, like 91 to 96 or something like that. I forget. In terms of the history of Godzilla and those movies, I'm not a big expert. I've seen the early Godzilla movies, never really followed up. But I am generally here for the riffs. I hear a lot of bands that I like and their influence, and I think there's a lot to the way that they approach these things with a ton of energy. I think their live shows have gotten better and better every time I've seen them, and in general, the band only seems to have improved, and this record is their best yet. It's like I said, there's really not much more to it than they're just kind of throttling through everything they do as fast as they can. It really is a bulldozer of a record, and that's not the most interesting thing about it, but it is the most inspiring thing about it. It does really get me to keep listening, because if you're one of those people who've heard it all in terms of death metal and thrash metal, and you've gone over all of the classics, and like maybe your taste leans towards the brutal thrash metal side of things because that's where the riff count is the highest, the intensity and the stakes is always right there. This is a band that will please that urge to just that where you're demanding that every moment is this elite thrash metal moment that is brutally attacked. And I think that's a real talent, and it takes a lot of work to put together songs like that make sense and flow well and work one after another without all sounding the same. So there's a real accomplishment here in this record, and you can tell a lot of time went into it in terms of just machining out those riffs so that they make sense. They have a lot of impact, and there are still a couple of big thrash metal grooves in there. There's a couple of big moments that start to speak to the personal style of the guitarist in terms of what kind of riffs he creates and when the big moments hit, and there's more spectacle and less density to some of these parts, to the point where it's more of a memorable record. I will say this is a lot like the 2021 record. There's the sound, the function of everything. It's all very similar, and you're getting what you expect from this band. But I would say this is kind of the expert level version of it, the best version of the band. And I think I was just really stoked to sit down with this record and just get blown away by it, because it was an attack throughout, and it was something worth getting excited over, because I mean, I'm mostly here for riffs, and this is a band that does it better than most. So very high recommendation for me. Completely stoked on this record. I think it's one of the best of August. I was happy to spend as much time as possible with it, and I think every aspect of it is pretty impressive. I don't know if it's the most lasting thing. I think it's the latest thing from this band, and I think each of their records are either going to raise the bar or hold that consistency to the point where the latest one is probably going to be my favorite unless they change drastically. So otherwise, the theme is just okay for me. I think is there a way to make that more interesting if you're not like a huge fan of kaiju and Godzilla? I don't know. It did get me to watch some of the newer movies and such, but not quite my thing enough to really set it over the edge for me in terms of theme. Otherwise, big fan of this band. I think they're doing great work and definitely recommend this one. It came out on August 9th. You can listen to it now and check out my review for more detailed thoughts. Upon the back of a feeble